الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا وما جعلنا القبلة التي كنت عليها إلا لنعلم من يتبع الرسول ممن ينقلب على عقبيه وإن كانت لكبيرة إلا على الذين هدى الله وما كان الله ليضيع إيمانكم إن الله بالناس لرؤوف رحيم صدق الله العظيم. Respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, regarding ayat number 143 of Surat al-Baqarah, before we go very far, just some basic unique characteristics about this ayah. Among the miracles of the Quran, among the mu'jizat of the Quran, is also the miracle or mu'jiza of the particular placement of words and particular placement of ayat. It is very important to understand and remember that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he did not take formal studies where he studied the normal sciences or education of that time. Though he was very well mannered, he was very intelligent, but he did not study the sciences that we know, such as poetry and language and mathematics. He knew basic numbers and basic arithmetic, but it was not to that level or to that degree. As we know that for some time he was a businessman, he also ran business, and so he did know numbers, but not to that degree. Today we claim to have very high levels of mathematics, and we've gone very far in math and science and in other fields. So sometimes when you open the Quran and you read the ayat of the Quran, one can be surprised at how a human being who had not studied mathematics could have so perfectly put some verse in a particular place. And even then that verse is perfectly placed as far as meaning is concerned, as far as lugha and language is concerned, as far as subject matter and topic is concerned. Specific words are placed in that ayah that make it unique to that particular point and part in the Quran, and that particular point and part in the surah. So it makes it very clear that this is not the word of a human being, let alone the word of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This is not his words. This is not the words of human beings or the word of humanity. But this is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Looking at this number system, it made it very, very clear that even the most skilled in mathematics could not have been so perfect in their placement. And even if someone was so skilled in mathematics and was very expert in math, so they may not have that level of control of language to be able to put a certain word in a certain ayah, in a certain place, in the surah, in the Quran. So this is pure and very clear evidence. And this Quran is not the word of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, let alone this Quran being the word of any other human being who may claim to be an expert in some field. Ayat number 143 of Surat al-Baqarah. If you take number of ayat, this is where I want to talk about this unique miracle. If you take number of ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah, there is 286 ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah. 286 ayat, and they're not short ayat. Very lengthy ayat. Surah Al-Baqarah takes up more than 2 juz, almost 2.5 juz is Surah Al-Baqarah, just the length of Surah Al-Baqarah based on the number of ayat and lengthy ayat. They're not short ayat. With that said, if you divide 286 by 2, you'll get 143. So 143 is the middle between 1 and 286. The middle ayah will be 143. In this ayah, ayat number 143, which is the middle ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. In a similar manner, we have made you a middle ummah. Wasatan means in the middle. Ummatan wasata also means a balanced ummah, but that ummah that follows a middle path. The placement of the word middle in this particular ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah, which is quite amazing because meaning-wise, it makes perfect sense. In the context of the ayat before it, in the context of the ayat coming after it, the subject matter of this ayah, that is also a miracle in its own. And we'll come back to that when we get to the tafseer of the ayah. Some of the miracles of the Quran, mu'jizat of the Quran. The placement of this word, wasatan, middle. Ummatan wasatan, you are a middle ummah. So one is the actual number of the ayah placed in the middle of Surah Al-Baqarah. That in itself is one mu'jiza, one miracle. Another miracle. Another miracle of Surah Al-Baqarah is that if you take from Surah Al-Baqarah, you take from the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah up until this point, up until ayat number 143. We know as human beings, whenever we write something important, if an important document is written or an important book is written, and this is actually the style of particular reports that may be written in higher levels of education, when you get to your doctorates and your dissertations, when you get to the level of writing a thesis. And we don't have time to go into all those details, but just what is important is that in the very beginning, especially if the thesis is about a very important topic and that topic has many, many categories, sub-topics or subjects that may be related to that particular topic. Many times what's important is that we will state the most important topics in the beginning. Just a statement will be made. This topic, these are some basic important topics that will be discussed in this thesis, kind of giving you an idea of what topics are to come. The most important topics will be given in the beginning. Then you give a background. That background can be quite lengthy as to why you're mentioning those topics. When the topics are mentioned, then a lengthy background is given. Sometimes the background can be very long, few chapters. And in that background, since now you have laid down your argument for why you want to talk about those important topics, the background kind of merges into your topic. And then you have a lengthy discussion about your topic. So you have your important topics, then you have your background, your arguments for why you're talking about this, what is the importance of these topics, what led you to come up with these topics, why are they so important. Then you talk about the topics themselves. Again, there are different ways of writing thesis when you study dissertations, but we're giving you a general theme. You will find other styles of writing, and you can go into the study of that. That's a different study in itself. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because that is how intellectual documents, that is how intellectual books, intellectual discussions are written in general. The more eloquent a topic is, the more eloquence is required, the more this style will become evident in that type of work. What is amazing about Surat al-Baqarah, and again, you can go and study this in many surahs in the Quran. It's not limited to Surat al-Baqarah only, but many surahs of the Quran will have this unique style. Sometimes it'll go in different styles in different ways. Many of them, when you start to just study the style of the surah, how it is written, you'll be surprised. And what an amazing, eloquent system the subjects of that surah are mentioned. But coming to Surah al-Baqarah, in the beginning of Surah al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the miracle of the Quran. That this is the book, there's no doubt in this book. And also this is a fact that it is a guidance for those who have taqwa. So who are the people of taqwa? A brief description was given about the people of taqwa, the believers. Few ayat, first 5 ayat are dealing with this. Then a brief discussion about the kuffar, 2 ayat, and then you have 14 ayat about the munafiqeen or hypocrites. It was just explanation done. The very basic topics mentioned in the very beginning. Then there came the discussion for the origin of man. which was important to point out what is belief. So it was mentioned very, very clearly that the Quran is something that cannot be replicated by mankind. And it is important to believe in it, otherwise the punishment is the fire of Jahannam if you do not believe in the Quran. And if you do believe, there is paradise. Few miracles about the importance of the Quran and in the origin of man. Now came the discussion for the background behind the major topics mentioned in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah. What is the background? The creation of insan. And one of the most major ummah or nations that have gone through a revelation and gone through stage after stage, very similar to what this ummah may go through. But that nation, the Bani Israel, they rejected faith and they did not follow the prophets and messengers. And this was to establish the fact that there was a need for a new revelation, and that the Bani Israel, they were not qualified to hold on to wahi or carry this major trust and amana of taking care of wahi or revelation. That was established. Because someone may argue that you have this Quran, but we already have nations in the past that have revelations. We already have nations in the past the prophets were sent to. Why you need a new deen? Why you need a new system? But it was made very clear that the revelations of the past were limited to the Bani Israel. They were not given to this ummah. They were not given to all of mankind, as the deen of Islam is. They were limited to the Bani Israel. And even Anbiya alayhimus salam, they were also sent and coming only for the Bani Israel. So the background is made very clear. And the Bani Israel, they killed many of them and they went through all of their vices in great detail was mentioned. So it made it very clear that there was a time for a new system. Someone may ask, what is that system? Has that system ever existed before? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it very clear in the argument that yes, the very foundations of this system have already been put in place, even before the coming of the Bani Israel. And that was the millat of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. It was already displayed and already given to mankind. Even before that, there was systems that were made, but until the coming of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, humanity had not reached that level of maturity to have a complete system. But that system was then completed and shown. The very, very foundation in very, very simple format was given and shown by the millat of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. And what was important about the millat of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam is that it was a very organized and structured system. Very important to remember, organized and very structured. It was not some haphazard system or some random event, no. And it was so organized that it had a location, which is the Kaaba Baytullah. It had a leader. At that time, it was Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. It had a system of constitution, which was the millat of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. Very organized, very structured. The Bani Israel, they could not hold on to that system. So they lost it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, up until this point, mentioned the important topics, very important subjects, and then has given a background for why these subjects are important. Coming up until the middle of this surah, this ayat number 143, this is now the turning point of bringing a unique system and everyone's attention back to the major points. But it should also be noted that what is amazing about the Quran, There's so many things amazing about the Quran, but also coming to this amazing system is that it is unique to see that from the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, in the beginning, some subjects were mentioned, very few ayat, 2-3 ayat. Some were only touched on, some were only mentioned. Then there was a detailed discussion about some topics. Coming to this middle ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah, now you will find the opposite starting. Those subjects that were mentioned briefly, that were just touched on, now you will find the detailed discussion about those important topics. And up until now, those subjects that had detailed discussions and explanations, so you'll find those subjects mentioned, but very briefly. Few ayat, some ayat, one ayah, something. Very briefly you'll find. So this is a turning point in the surah. Now it is bringing our attention that, listen, you have come to the middle of this surah. Now we're going to answer those questions for you. We're going to give you the details of that. For example, in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, there was mentioned this Quran is a guidance for muttaqeen. Muttaqeen are those who believe in the unseen and they establish salah. Very brief qualities were mentioned. So I mean that believers are those who establish the deen of Islam. What is the deen of Islam? Now you will find a detailed discussion of Abwabul Bir, the chapters of righteousness. It is coming. Where detailed discussion of ahkam, commandments and prohibitions, awamir and nawahi and laws, ahkam were mentioned. And this is the deen you have with you. These are the ahkam, the major ahkam of deen of Islam. A structured system of society, a structured system for individual person, a structured system for your physical system, eating halal and avoiding haram and fasting, a structured system for your spiritual system, giving sacrifices and spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a structured system for family life, very detailed ahkam and ayat mentioned, and so on and so forth. One of the most comprehensive surahs of the Quran. Yes, it is lengthy, but there's so many details now coming, explaining what is the deen of Islam. So any questions we may have had from the beginning of the surah, there are some parts in the surah in the beginning that some ayat is mentioned, or some word was mentioned, or something was referenced to, or a few ayat were mentioned. Now coming to this part of the surah, from here on, you'll find the details. And you'll be surprised in what a beautiful way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions those details. Some of these details, they will come in a unique system backwards. For example, in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, you have the qualities of the believers, 5 ayat. You have qualities of the disbelievers, 2 ayat. And you have the qualities of munafiqeen. You have the qualities of the hypocrites, about 14 ayat. So detailed discussion about the hypocrites, 14 ayat. After this ayah 143, when you go a few ayat, you will find this system reversed. You'll see a mention of the munafiqeen, but it will be mentioned in only 1 or 2 ayat. Then you'll mention, there'll be a mention of the kuffar or disbelievers, just few ayat. And then you will have the mention of the believers, their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their following of the ahkam of deen. And then what are the ahkam of deen? Detailed discussion. So in this format, and again, you'll find these unique formats going from this point till the end of Surah Al-Baqarah. So this ayah number 143, not only is it the middle of Surah Al-Baqarah, not only is that word mentioned of this being the middle of Surah Al-Baqarah, not only is it uniquely placed as far as numbers are concerned, but this is also a turning point in this surah. It's also middle of Surah Al-Baqarah in the sense that now it is a turning point. So that there's a complete balance between the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah up until now and what is coming from this ayah until the end of Surah Al-Baqarah. This is the balance. It's like having the example, they used to have the seesaw in some of these parks where the kids play. And if you have a balance on both sides so they can play on the seesaw. But if one side is heavier, so the seesaw, you cannot really have much fun on it. Similarly, in Surah Al-Baqarah, you have this ayah, ayat number 143 is like the middle of that seesaw. And you will see the topics being referenced from the second half of Surah Al-Baqarah. Reference will be going back to the first half to bring a complete balance and the unique structure and the unique system and the unique topics of Surah Al-Baqarah. So Surah Al-Baqarah has numerous miracles. This ayah alone is a very unique miracle with many miracles within this ayah. So we have just gone over 1 or 2 points about this ayah. We'll see how many we can go over, because unfortunately studying Tafseer is a very difficult thing. We're studying just even the translation. We'll try to cover as many of the miracles that we can, and then we'll go on. Otherwise, it may take very long for us to be able to complete Surah Al-Baqarah. So we will, just to mention the importance of this particular ayah, number 143, particularly the words ummatan wa wasatan, a middle ummah. This was just a brief discussion about this ayah and the miracle of this ayah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of us understanding and give us the tawfiq to practice His deen. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد. عن أبي الدرداء رضي الله عنه قال: إني سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: من سلك طريقا يطلب فيه علما سلك الله به طريقا من طرق الجنة وإن الملائكة لا تضع أجنحتها رضا لطالب العلم إلى آخر حديث. رواه أبو داود. This hadith is in Abu Dawood, one of the 6 most authentic books of hadith. Sayyidina Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu, he narrates saying, I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam saying, Man salaka tariqan yatlubu fihi ilman, whosoever travels a path seeking the knowledge, meaning knowledge of deen, ilman here with the tanween and also singular. So coming to these words, man sadaka tariqan, whosoever travels a path, meaning one path, yatlubu fihi ilman, seeking with it ilman, knowledge. One is ulum, many sciences and knowledges, and one is ilman, one type of knowledge. So ilman here is the knowledge of deen, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, what is unique about this word is the tanween itself, seeking great knowledge. Not seeking any knowledge, but ilman, great knowledge. And the great knowledge, or the greatest knowledge, is the knowledge of deen, the ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So seeking that knowledge, the talib ilm, the student of ilm. So we are seeking that knowledge. Whosoever travels a path, seeking that knowledge to get the recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking that great knowledge, the knowledge of deen. Sadaqallahu bihi tariqan min turuqil jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make this person travel on the path from the many paths of paradise. There are a few points that need to be understood here. This hadith is not only limiting this path of Jannah to the Akhirah. Generally, in our idea is that someone who will pass away, so then they will make it to paradise. Obviously, that's the obvious understanding. But more than that, you will find the students of Quran and Sunnah, you will find that even in this world, while they're studying and they're sincere in their study, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them unique tranquility in their time of study. Ask any student of Quran and Sunnah who has really studied Quran and Sunnah, even after a long time they have left that system, 20, 30, 40 years of their life. If you ask them, what was one of the unique times of your life? They'll tell you the best time of my life was when I was studying Quran and Sunnah. Ask any sincere student of Quran and Sunnah, they'll tell you, the best time of my life was when I was busy with my studies. During the study, they may be, oh, this is difficult, this is tiring, this is this is that. But after that, that was one of the best times of their life. And you can ask any student of Quran and Sunnah who's sincere. And we have found many of the students, those who study Quran, those who study Quran and Sunnah, those who study tahfidh, memorizing of the Quran also. During the time of their study, they may not be so serious. But afterwards, they really crave that system, the kind of craving that comes because of how much they miss it and how much they enjoyed it. You will not find this with the other sciences. Go to any college student. After they leave college, ask anybody who's been through college or anybody who's been through high school or anybody who's been through the systems of education, that the time of your school, was it the best time? They'll tell you, no, it was stressful and it was this problem and that problem and I really hated that teacher and really hated that exam and it was so stressful and there was times where I wanted to quit completely and really, they will give you every complaint that is there, let alone them ever wanting to ever go back. It rarely happens somebody goes back. Whereas for the students of Quran and Sunnah, there's so much of a craving for it that there are systems that are put in place that even after your studies, you can come back and do different dawr and revisions. You have dawr Tafseer and dawr Hadith and you have all these different revisions where you can study revising of the Tafseer, of the Hadith, of all of these. So these are for those students who have gone out after their ulum. Now they're ulama and they're scholars, but they want to come back and relive that unique time, the time that they missed, or that time that they're missing. And they want to go back and get that feeling of talib ilm. Because that feeling is something that cannot be expressed in words. It's a very, very unique sakina, very, very unique tranquility, and a very, very unique system as far as taste is concerned. It has its own taste. That is why you will find, after the studies, you'll find the ulama will remember their time in study in a very unique way. You don't find this in other systems. Why do they remember so much of their study time? Why do they have that special connection with their teacher? They can speak so highly of their ulama and scholars. Because that ilm of deen, when it takes you on the path to paradise, it is an amazing path. It is an amazing system. And it is an amazing feeling. It's not just limited to the study itself. The overall environment is very different. The time the student wakes up, mind is on studies. Thinking of his Quran, thinking of Hadith, thinking of fiqh, thinking of this topic and this subject and that topic. Coming up with different types of levels of study and memorizing. From morning till evening, our mind is completely occupied. And with that, so much barakah comes in life. The amount of barakah and blessings you can't even express in words. And these students of Quran and Sunnah, those that are sincere, they're the real friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why if you have some difficulty in life, ask the students of Quran and Sunnah to make dua for you. Those who are sincere. There are many who goof around and they play around and they're not serious. But even those that are not serious, you'd be surprised how much they miss it. And you can ask the students of Quran and Sunnah that during the graduations, you ask the ulama during the graduations, who are the ones that cried the most? You see, in the graduations from other systems of education, from high school, people are so happy that they graduated. Some throw their hats and they burn their books, and they're so happy they just got done with it. The same is the system with the college and other institutions. But when it comes to the students of Quran and Sunnah, in the graduation, you'll see them crying. And you ask them, why are you crying? You should be so happy to be jumping for joy. You're ulama now. Why are you crying? And all of them will tell you that we miss this. We know that we're going to, for life, miss this. On one side, there's the joy that, okay, alhamdulillah, we've reached a certain point, we're graduating. But deep down inside, the pain is so strong that I'm going to go back to the world and I'm going to miss this. It dawns on them, and that missing, that kind of, it's a very unique time. You should go and you should, if you ever get a chance in your life, go and sit in the Dawrah of Bukhari, when they're finishing Sahih Bukhari, when they finish the Alim course at the ending of the Ulum al-Islamiyya, the last year, they study Sahih Sitta, and they do Dawrah of Sahih Bukhari, and at the ending, when they're reading the last hadith, if you ever get a chance, go sit there on the last day. You'll be surprised how much the students cry. Because this is the last lesson that they have, and the last thing they'll hear from their teachers, and the tears start. And many times they can hardly finish reading that last hadith. Even the students that were reading the Dawrah, they can't read that last. They're crying so much they cannot read that last hadith. They have to ask another student to stand up, and then they start crying. And another. It's an amazing system. And there's a kind of dawning on everyone that we're going to really miss this. When it says this path to Jannah, it's not just limited to the Akhirah. In this world, the kind of feelings and the kind of connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that comes with the study of Quran and Sunnah, it cannot be expressed in words. It can't be expressed in words. Unfortunately, we live in such a materialistic world. We live in so much materialism that we have been deprived of seeing that system or even experiencing that system. Unfortunately. We're so busy with the world that we miss the reality of those who are traveling this path to Jannah. That this path to Jannah, it comes in this world. The feelings, the understandings, and the unique system comes in this world. It's not just in the Akhirah. Obviously, the rewards of the Akhirah are there. It's too difficult to talk about those rewards, what is there. I'm just talking about in this world, you can see it and you can experience it. Now, what kind of feelings the students have in their last year? And most of the time, they'll be talking about how they're going to finish their ulum, and one day they'll be ulama. And then in the last year, when they're doing their dawrah, and you ask them, how was your time? You're excited to go? And they won't be able to say yes. They'll be like, look, we don't know what we're missing. It dawns on them what they're going to miss. And many ulama go back. Some of them go back and they want to continue more, try to do more, because that feeling is always there. So this is what is also meant, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make this person travel the path to Jannah. It's something that cannot be expressed in words, what happens in this worldly system. Unfortunately, we live in such a materialistic system that it's difficult to even express what that means or what that system is. All we can say is, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and at least allow us to experience that once in our life or sometime in our life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept us for the effort of His deen. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of us the tawfiq to practice His deen. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ.